I am a full-time professor in the School of the Arts. I'm also an artist who works with photography, performance, and text-based work. I'm actually from Sweden, if you detect an accent. And I came here to New York also as a young student, as a 20-year-old student, but I didn't attend Cooper at that time. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the school and the curriculum program, and then Amy is going to come back and talk about the application process, and Mike will go last, as Amy already explained. So Cooper Union is made up of 3 schools: the School of the Art, the School of the Engineering, and the School of Architecture. We also have a rigorous humanities program that feeds into the classroom of all these 3 schools. And here you can see the sculpture of Peter Cooper in front of the Cooper Union Foundation building where we are today. Peter Cooper, was an inventor, an industrialist, and philanthropist who founded Cooper Union in 1859. And this building is then at the heart of the schools, which always has had a social mission to prepare students to make enlightened contributions to society. And this is, at the core of this, is also the free admission that we are now on our 4th year, I think, to regaining. Mike will talk more about that as well. And in the School of the Art, to come back to the mission then, there's always a conversation then not only about form and color, but also about the world that we live in, and thinking about like what art means in this context to fulfill the mission of the school. Ska vi se here. So here is our campus. Jokingly, we say that East Village is our campus, but here we have 4 buildings that surround us, which comprise our campus. The foundation building that we're in right now is the center, and this is where most classes takes place. You can see there at the bottom across the street, we have 41 Square Cooper, which is a new building. Some courses take place there, mostly humanities and social science classes, but also some art classes. And there are also studios at the top floor of that building. For example, I teach color theory in that building. There is also a residence hall a few blocks away north of these 2 buildings. Nu ska vi se. So Cooper Union is then really a kind of a hub in the East Village community. And you can see here the Great Hall, which we're in right now, has hosted talks by many, many significant people, from Frederick Douglass and Abraham Lincoln, and the list goes on. Many important organizations also saw its founding here, such as the suffragette movement, or the Red Cross also started here in this hall. It continues since its founding to be a hall of civic engagement where programming is free to the public. And so as Cooper Union student, you would often see a line sort of turning around the corner for people waiting, and the community waiting to come in and see something interesting in this hall. So here we have the mission of the School of the Art. So we talk about educating students then in the broadest sense. So this is not a conversation, as I said, just in terms of aesthetics, in the ways that things look or function, but also in what it means to be an artist in the world and in society, and how we can use that knowledge, collective knowledge, to transform society and participate and contribute to society to form a world. And we're also then thinking about what role art has in that kind of process. So moving over then to the admission process. Unlike other schools, we don't have admissions representatives. Everyone that you'll see today are either an alumni or faculty in the School of the Arts. we all participate then as we do this work of admissions. So if you, for example, have requested a portfolio review, I encourage you to ask as much questions as you can, and you will get first-hand answers of people who have the experience of being students or faculty or both in this school. So also the other thing is that there's no kind of one puppet master who oversees this process. I am the chair of the committee, but we work, at least 5 to 7 people will see your portfolio and discuss and consider it at length and in depth. So Cooper Union is a highly selective school. We accept 65 students per year, and there is approximately 5 to 10 transfer students. This number gives us small class sizes that are usually around 14 to 15 students at the most. Sometimes in advanced classes are even smaller, which means that you'll have a lot of access to your professors and you get a lot of individual attention. The Faculty of the Humanities and Social Sciences, or HSS as we call it, is where the students of the 3 schools come together in classes, whether it be psychology, philosophy, history, or poetry, or economics. In HSS, you take classes in different subjects in these different disciplines. So you're not only in your art classes, but also in HSS you will learn and develop your own critical thinking and awareness of the world. So we believe in well-rounded artists that acquire aesthetic, technical, and conceptual skills, and who also have a deepened understanding of society and the world we live in. We talk about Cooper Union then as having an integrated program. There are no majors. This is also a unique feature compared to other art schools. Students, after you've gone through our foundation program, you would take courses in a number of areas, and you don't have to choose a kind of specialization when you're 18 years old. But you will, so for example, if you come in as somebody who has focused on painting, you can take classes in sound art, in graphic design, in photography, and performance, or whatever makes sense for your work. Together with an advisor, you will develop your own path through the school. You can, of course, also only take courses focus on courses in photography, for example, if that would be your special interest. So students then, they often learn through one-on-one interaction with their professors, in group settings with their peers. And it's common for the student then to take several classes with the same professor. So in a way, you can develop forms of mentorship through the school as you kind of maneuver your way through. After foundation year, you will also receive a studio space, and this is unique. Most schools also don't offer very little space in your junior or senior year, but at Cooper, you'll already as a sophomore receive a studio space where you work and learn what it means to have an art practice in general. So you will kind of start to understand what it means to have a professional life as an artist. So in that way, this is sort of reflective of your professional life as an artist. And in that studio, your faculty members would come to your studio and talk to you about your work. We also have a very distinguished faculty, and you don't have to take my word for it. You can also look for yourself on the website with all the people who have taught here and who are teaching here right now are all distinguished artists of their own. There are also many alumni accomplishments that Dean Mike Essl will also talk about. So this is just the iceberg that he will sort of give many examples of accomplishments of alumni in the world. So Cooper Union students often end up in many different areas of society. And in the School of the Art, you will obviously find gallery-based artists, or in the field of design, or even architecture. Our alumni do really well, and for the most part remain well connected to the school. So now I'm going to move over to talk a little bit about the curriculum. This is our curriculum, which starts with the foundation year, and this is also a unique program compared to other schools. Freshman year is then divided into 4 different sections, so you will go through the whole first year with your own cohort that you meet every week in these different classes. And these classes are basic drawing, so there you learn, to look, to draw from observation, but many other techniques as well, to sort of to think through your hands. Then we have 2-dimensional design, which is, thinking about flat work, 3-dimensional design, which is mostly considered with space and spatial development, 4-dimensional design, which is a class that is devoted to time-based media, so there you'd have film, video, but also performance and work through also photography. And then there is color theory, where we work with specific tools to also hone our observation skills and our thinking through color. I teach both color theory and 4-dimensional design in the foundation year. So techniques then, that's another kind of unique thing about Cooper, because you will immediately in the first year have access to wood workshops, metal workshops, and casting and so forth, as compared to many other schools where you will work only, first, let's say, in cardboard and hot glue the first year. So not only do we have this sculpture shop, there is also other more advanced technologies like laser cutting and 3D printing and so forth, and also techniques classes in digital software like Photoshop, After Effects, and video editing software. Then we come in here now to the academic requirements of this year. You will have an introductory class in art history, which is continued by other art history classes as you move further into the program. So that will constitute an equivalent of a minor. And then there is also the humanities core, or the HSS 1 and 2 in foundation, followed by HSS 3 and 4 the following years, in which you study the large ideas or history of ideas in culture and society in connection to the development of the world. So the first year then is extremely rigorous, and everybody takes the same classes so that we get to the same page. You can think of it as a kind of reset. Students come from all over the United States, but also from many different parts of the world. And this foundation year sort of brings us in to have a common vocabulary and a common way of speaking about the work, and also techniques of understanding and working. So after this, you will be then, in your sophomore year, you will have a studio. You can see there in the upper right corner is a teacher meeting with the studio in their studio, talking about their work. So it's not a gigantic space, but it's a good space to work in. So in class then, in the lower left corner, you will then experience group discussions and critiques as a central part of the program. Under the guidance then of a professor and with peers, you will probe and try to find deeper areas of your own practice and learn new methods of working and thinking. We also have then different areas that you then will start to be able to take classes in, such as painting, drawing, printmaking, photography, film, video, graphic design, sculpture, performance. And we also have performance, that's what I said, yes. And then there are electives. And electives then include classes such as critical art theory, and there will be specific project classes that our faculty who sort of work in specific ways might offer, and other kinds of more specialized classes. We also have an exchange program, and as you can see, it's with schools in the Netherlands, Spain, Switzerland, Germany, Israel, Japan, and England. We're currently working to engage a school in Mexico. That's underway. This would happen then in your junior year. But students who are interested in going abroad would start by thinking already in their sophomore year where they would want to go and what they would want to do, so that they are prepared to spend a semester or a year abroad in their junior year. And then they come back in their senior year and share their experiences and exchange with their classmates how their work has developed. There are, of course, also exchange students from all of these schools that also attend Cooper, so the conversation is rich in this way from many different parts of the world. So the facilities at Cooper then, we have amazing facilities compared to other schools as far as my experience goes. The sculpture shop I already mentioned that have metal and wood and casting and plaster section. There's also a kiln, a ceramic section. Cooper also have facilities that are outdated, so we hang on to like older techniques such as a letter press, shop with movable lead type so that you can set type by hand, like 19th century bookmaking. There is also still darkroom facilities. We have black and white darkrooms, and we have a room for alternative processes. But there are, of course, also like up-to-date digital photographic editing and printing facilities, which have actually recently been renovated, printers of different sizes, and printers for more experimental materials, and we just got a dye sublimation printer so you can print on fabric and metals. Then there's film and video editing stations, and film and video studios with lighting equipment. There's a print shop with silkscreen, photogravure, and lithography technology. Lithography, as you also may know, is also an older printing technology where you work on a stone. We have paper making, so you can make paper as a substrate to then draw or paint on, but you could also make paper as an art form in itself. There is also a new lab, the AACE lab, the Art and Architecture and Computing and Engineering lab, which has a whole plethora of contemporary machines and tools such as 3D printing, laser cutting, vacuum pressing, industrial embroidering, and there's also a robotic machine that I have just seen that cuts out forms from a kind of blocks of material. So that's a new lab that we just opened. And then there's, of course, a library, and there are also exhibition galleries, both in this building and also in the building across the street, where you often see in the spring semester, especially senior students that are mounting their senior thesis shows, but also students who are not graduating might also use these exhibition spaces to curate shows, for example, or mount other thematic exhibitions that they are interested in. We also do an end of the year show where we showcase all students' work that have been happening during the semester. So that also happens at the end of the spring semester. At Cooper, then, there are also dorms. And that's in this building that is a little bit north of Foundation Building here where we are. So that tend to be the #1 option for freshman students. And mostly then in sophomore year, students will find places together with classmates around New York City. It seems as if Bushwick in Brooklyn is now the area where students find places. In these dorms, often you will make friends, and there is of course a social life, friends that may last you for a lifetime. At Cooper, there is also pre-college programs, such as the Saturday program, that has been a service to the New York City community for over 50 years, offering free studio courses to New York City public high school students. They're happening fall and spring semesters on Saturdays, so throughout the year, and they are taught by Cooper undergraduate instructors. And this means that if you were interested in this, you would gain a first-hand understanding and also experience of what it means to teach. There is also a class that we offer as a kind of support for students who teach. It's called Art as Practicum, that invites artists then to actively explore what it would mean to teach. So you're not kind of as a student just thrown into the program, you have support and guidance. Then there's also a summer art intensive that is open to local and out-of-state students. And there are scholarships for this program, and instructors who work in this program are also professional artists. So that's what I have to tell you about the structure of the school. Now I'm going to give over the word to Amy Westpfahl, who is going to speak more pointedly about admissions. And I hope you will have great tours, and I'll see some of you in the portfolio review later. So, Amy. Thank you.
Hello again. All right. This is probably the stuff everybody really wants to hear about today, right? So hopefully a lot of you here today are having a portfolio review. If you're not, that's fine. We do have 2 more open houses coming up and some online events if you want to have a portfolio review. You know, we highly encourage you to do the portfolio review. We consider it, you know, a process for getting feedback about your work, which can be very helpful. You know, in some instances, you know, it acts like a one-way interview for us because we don't do interviews in during our admissions process. What I can tell you is that everything that is said to you is in love. So if it sounds like, you know, somebody might be critical or hard on you, just, you know, take it with a grain of salt, have an open mind, be open to the criticism, because the feedback that you're receiving today is not personal, but it is meant to help you as you move forward with the admissions process, okay? I also encourage you to take notes, because a lot of times the faculty or alumni reviewing you will give you some helpful suggestions about what you can work on with your work, but might also give you some suggestions for artists or shows to look at. What I always tell people is to show your most recent work. You don't want to show something from 8th grade. You want to show work that's been done in the last year, maybe 2 years at the most. You want to put your best foot forward. We definitely love to see real work. Observational drawing is very important because it is part of our admissions process. So if you haven't taken a drawing class yet, or you don't have a sketchbook, I highly encourage you to get one after today. And faculty love to look at sketchbooks, so please bring your sketchbooks if you have it. We also will look at that during admissions as well. So the first step in applying to Cooper is the Common App. If you're a senior, you probably already know about this a little bit. The Common App has become kind of a universal application that a lot of schools are using today. It's sort of so you can apply to 10 schools at once if you want to. Takes a little bit of the burden off, I suppose. And so the Common App is really the first step. If you're a transfer student here today, you're actually going to do a different application, which is on our website specifically for transfer students. So you need to complete and submit this application. There is a $75 application fee. Some schools offer fee waivers. If you want to check with your school's guidance counselor about that, that might help. And then, you know, we do require a certain amount of documents from you, transcripts or GED, if you, a certificate for the GED if you have that. And if you are a transfer student, we do require that you submit all the transcripts for all schools attended. Okay, that is really important, and if you don't submit all your college transcripts, we can revoke your admission if we don't see those from you. Okay, so very important. Recommendation letters, we'd like to see at least 2 for transfers. This should be from someone who you feel knows something about your work ethic, your commitment, even your desire to attend Cooper. I think recommendation letters that are specifically written about why Cooper would be the right program for you is definitely a good thing to have. So think about who you want to ask for that, okay? SAT or ACT scores, we are now test optional. We started a test optional pilot last year, and that is continuing for today. If you're a junior or sophomore, we are not sure yet. We are evaluating if we're going to continue the test optional policy for next year. So stay tuned on that. And then if English isn't your first language, we do require a TOEFL, IELTS, or Duolingo test score as well. So step 3 is the home test. This is definitely, I can say wholeheartedly, probably the most important step in our admissions process. We have what we say is we have a holistic admissions process, but it is very important to their faculty what you produce in the home test. The home test is a series of prompts that has been designed by the admissions committee, okay? And every year the committee changes these prompts, okay? This is something that you will have a month to complete. And this year, we are asking people to send the solutions for those prompts in back to us physically through the mail, but we're also asking that everyone upload the prompts in their application portal as well. So you'll learn more about what the application portal is once you've submitted your application. It is the place that you will go to see what documents have been submitted, what you're missing, what you need still, but also where you will upload your portfolio and this electronic home test. So another thing I want to encourage you to do is sometimes our emails go to people's spam, and I don't want you to miss any important notifications. So please make sure that you add the admissions@cooper.edu to your address book. And if for some reason you're not seeing things from us, please check your junk and spam folders, because it might be there, okay? So again, this test is really important to us. Please read all the instructions carefully, because there are some requirements in terms of size and media. So I always tell people, make sure you read it carefully, because you don't want to be disqualified for not reading the directions, okay? And then there is a questionnaire component to the home test. This is a series of questions that helps paint a larger picture of the individual for us. You know, things like, what are you reading? Why Cooper Union, etc. So please answer these thoughtfully. I can tell you that one-word answers don't impress the committee. Please write complete sentences. You don't have to write essays, but please check your spelling and grammar and things like that, because it is a college application. We'd love to see sketchbooks, so please, if you can submit your sketchbook as well. And then the portfolio. So the portfolio should be 15 to 20 images of your strongest and, again, most recent work. You want to put your best foot forward. Observational drawing would be good to have in there. Variety, anything that shows experimentation is good. And definitely self-directed projects. I think the committee is more impressed when we see some independent thinking and things that aren't always just that look like high school assignments. So think about that a little bit. Video or performance submissions, I would definitely consider editing these down to 2 or 3 minutes, because remember, the committee is looking at hundreds of portfolios. They don't necessarily have time to watch a 20-minute piece, but you can allude to the fact that it is part of a larger piece, okay? And then, it will be important for you to keep track and write down the title, the year, and the medium of the work that you're submitting as well. Okay, tuition and financial aid. Now this is for the parents, right? Everybody wants to know about this part. So one thing that makes our program unique is if you are admitted to the School of Art, you automatically receive a half tuition scholarship. That scholarship is guaranteed for all 4 years, and it's valued at $22,275 a year, okay? In addition to that scholarship, we do offer additional merit-based scholarship, but that is at our discretion. There isn't anything you would need to do for that. And then we do offer other need-based aid as well. In order to be considered for this, you have to submit your FAFSA. If you don't know what the FAFSA is, you should definitely get online and look at that after today. The FAFSA is something that's going to help determine what your expected family contribution will be toward tuition. This is important because if you are admitted to Cooper, when you receive your offer of admission letter, you will also receive a financial aid award letter right away that will basically say what you're being awarded and what you're going to be expected to pay. If you don't have that FAFSA filled out, it's going to tell you that you owe the entire sticker price of tuition, okay? Which can be stunning. So I would get that done as soon as you can, before you submit the application even, okay? And we do have some on-campus work opportunities. We have work study available. So that's also something to think about. And then some important dates and deadlines for you. If you are thinking about applying early decision, so what's the difference between early decision and regular decision? If you know that Cooper Union is your first choice, and you have only eyes for Cooper, you know that it is your top school and you're ready to commit right away. We want people who want us, so I encourage you to apply early. The benefit of that is that you will find out by February 1st if you've been admitted or not, and then you can relax for the rest of the spring. Early decision is binding, which means if you're admitted early, you do have to turn down any other offer of admission for anywhere else. So that application is due December 1st. The home test will be live for you to see in your admissions portal about a week later, and then you have a month to submit the test, which will be due on January 5th. And again, you will receive notice if you're admitted or not on February 1st. The other thing that can happen with early decision, we can say yes, we can say no, and we can what we call roll you over and reconsider you again with the regular decision pool, which is sort of like a second shot. So that's another thing to consider. Regular decision, this is probably, if you're not sure about Cooper, if you're not sure about New York, if you just want to roll the dice, apply to multiple schools, see who gives you the best financial offer, maybe regular decision's a better option for you. So that application is due January 5th. And again, the home test will go live in your portal about a week later. And then the submission date for that test is February 4th. And then you would receive your decision by April 1st. Okay, so lots of deadlines and dates to think about. I'm sure you'll have a lot more questions. We're going to do a Q&A at the end of the program today. But we're always available if you want to email us at admissions@cooper.edu if you're having any technical issues or anything. Feel free to reach out to us. And now we're going to actually, again, we had a little switch in our program today. So instead of jumping into the Q&A portion of the program, we're going to go back and meet our mighty dean of the School of Art. And we're going to have a quick little changeover with the computer. So one moment, please, while we switch. Okay.
My main practice is graphic design, but I work here at Cooper Union as the dean. I started out as the acting dean because I was a former faculty member. Now I'm an associate professor. I'm a former faculty observer to the Board of Trustees. I co-founded the Committee to Save Cooper Union, and I have the world's largest Mr. T memorabilia collection, but we won't talk about that today. What we will talk about is that I'm a Batman nerd. Big time. I love Batman. I grew up watching the 1966 Batman live action series starring Adam West and Burt Ward. And I love this show. And every day when I was a kid, it was on in syndication. And when it was on in syndication, it was on 2 times a day. So they'd show the first episode and then the second. And between the two, there was always a cliffhanger. And at the end of that cliffhanger, every week they said, same bat time, same bat channel. So I'm just going to show you a quick clip.
game commence.
Turn it up.
Horrors, 1 lemon. Double horrors,
2 lemons.
2 lemons. And if it's a third, instant and inescapable 50,000 volts. Close your eyes. Who dares to see it? Try us tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat channel.
So same bat time, same bat channel has become, in a way, like the mantra of my whole life. I do a lot of work about Batman. And I wonder, was Batman the first superhero that I saw? Was it maybe Superman in this cartoon? Was the first comic I saw maybe Bazooka Joe Bubblegum? But I've been a Batman fan for a long time. That's me. That's my Ben Cooper Halloween costume. And I've realized now that, after going to art school, why Batman motivated me the way it did. And it's because it's designed. It's absolutely designed. That's the logo. These credits were custom lettered. The henchmen are designed. It says henchmen on their shirts. Yak and Boff, Goon. And the fight scenes were famously lettered. So Powie, Awk, Crunch. I fell in love with Batman. So I started buying Batman comics at the grocery store and found out there was a comic book store in my neighborhood in Abington, Pennsylvania. That's the logo for my high school. And I started working at this place called the Comic Book Store. And that was the actual name, the Comic Book Store. I like to joke that this was my boss. And that he was so opinionated, I walked in listening to Madonna, and when I walked out, I was listening to Metallica. But while I was there, I learned about all these things I'd never seen before, like wacky packs, which were made in the 70s. I especially remember this one being a favorite, which is Legs Pantyhose turned into Logs Pantyhose. I read old issues of Mad Magazine in the store, and I got really into comic book history. This is the first appearance of Batman in Detective Comics 27, and that led to me falling in love with 2 really well-known comics, which are The Dark Knight Returns and Watchmen. And what I loved about Dark Knight so much is he beats up Superman. I'm a longtime Superman hater, so it was pretty incredible to see this happen. And there was a group in the comic called the Sons of Batman, or the SOBs, which inspired me to make a logo for a t-shirt and start a fan club when I was a kid. I was the only member. I only had to make 1 t-shirt. And in Watchmen, what I loved about Watchmen was the craft. And there's one issue in the middle of the series called Fearful Symmetry that is a little hard to explain, but what blew me away was that the panel structure for the comic is completely mirrored on the opposite side of the page from the center. So if you start on the center spread, you can see that every spread is mirrored from the page on the other side of the book. And that kind of craft had me thinking about who makes these things. And one of the themes in Watchmen is who makes the world, which really stuck with me. And then embarrassingly, I also love the Punisher. And I love the Punisher. Well, it's embarrassing because he's a vigilante, but this is why I love the Punisher. I have anger issues. And the Punisher's superpower is essentially he can tell if you're guilty or not. He just knows. So he never takes aim at civilians. He's never killed a civilian. And I was explaining that to my boss at the comic book store, and he was like, what about that comic where he shoots somebody for running a red light? Or where he shoots somebody for littering? And I read the very next appearance of the Punisher, and the writer after him had to redo that story. Had to say that the Punisher was drugged, that those people were not harmed. What I learned is that the writer of this comic did not like that the Punisher was violent and sort of made a cartoon of it and took it too far. So it was actually an act of protest. And when they revised that protest, what we call that in the comics world retconning, which is maybe a minutia, right? But this is what made me fall in love with the small moments of comic books. like understanding that the continuity was something that could be changed. And I got into this really silly comic, Kiss. What's great about this comic is that they had their blood drawn at a press event and they added their blood to the ink of the comic, which is really ridiculous, but was enough for me to go home to my father and say, do you have any Kiss records? These guys are crazy. And he had one Kiss record, which I believe has the greatest piece of graphic design on its cover. Behold. This is the cover of Rock and Roll Over. It was designed by Michael Durrett in 1976, and I saw this record and I absolutely had an epiphany. I went to my junior high school library and I said, what is this stuff? Right? I didn't know what it was. I didn't know it was a profession. And they introduced me to this book, Milton Glaser Graphic Design, where I learned about the modes of graphic design. Like I learned about posters and about logos, and I learned about illustration, but I didn't learn how to make it. So I went and bought another book on how to make graphic design, this book, Graphic Designer's Production Handbook. And this led to me doing like the school newspaper in high school and the literary magazine in high school and designing the yearbook in high school. And I became obsessed with design to the point where I started wondering, how do I pay for art school? And right around this time, there was a comic book event where the Joker, he hurts Robin with a crowbar, as depicted here in this scene. And in the last page of the comic, they put up a phone number in which you could call and vote whether Robin should live or die. And I voted to kill Robin, and he died in the next issue. And I went out and bought 100 of these issues, knowing that it would be valuable. And I got a dealer table at New York Comic Con as an 18-year-old kid, sold my 2000 Batman comics, made about $12,000 in profit, and it paid for me to come to art school. So Batman paid for me to come here. So I ended up at Cooper Union, welcome. It was founded by Peter Cooper in 1859 to be free to all. I received a full scholarship to the Cooper Union, and comics covered my first year of expenses. So now I get to Cooper Union and I have this funny thing happen. Nobody wants to talk about comics. My teachers don't want to talk about comics. Nobody's making comics. It's just not the place for it. It's still actually not the place for it. And I was so confused because comics taught me about style and different ways of representation. They introduced me to the typography I love. They introduced me to characters with struggling with HIV and AIDS. And one of the first Black comic book creators, maybe the inventor of the graphic novel, Matt Baker, he went to Cooper Union. And Peter Cooper had his own comic. Doesn't make any sense. So I graduate from Cooper Union and start my own company, The Chopping Block. And at the time, when I say I started a company, it just meant I had my own computer and I had a modem. That was all I needed to start a company. And I founded it with other Cooper Union graduates. So that's us pretending to be NASA race car drivers. That's us pretending to be horror movie monsters, astronauts, Cub Scouts, orange farmers. That's me picking oranges. And that represents about 10 years of my life, not making comics and doing client work and design. And then I get a call from a friend at Chronicle Books, and he says, do you know anything about Batman? It turns out I do. So I switched my practice and I started doing book design. So I'm gonna fly through this really quick, but this has been the bulk of my work for the last 20 years, is doing these large art books about superheroes. So this is The Art of Batman Begins. By the way, DC Comics had an archival copy of that Detective Comics 27, and I got to touch it, and it was like seeing God for the first time. It was amazing. I got to work on the Dark Knight book. So this is the one with Heath Ledger. Superman Returns. So when I say design the book, I do all the typography, all the typesetting, the packaging, the jacket, the cover, even the color of the ribbon at the top of the book is something that I help decide. I also worked on this CoverGirls book. There's Robin, whole spread about Gotham and Batman. This action figure book had a lot of Batman. Here's Robin. Hello. But the two projects I'm really proud of is, as I mentioned, I'm a huge fan of The Watchmen, and I got to work with Dave Gibbons, the artist on The Watchmen, on this book, Watching The Watchmen. And I use this page for the end papers that I mentioned before. It starts the book. And then this just to show you sort of the different kinds of ideas in the book. Then I had the privilege of working with Jerry Robinson, and Jerry invented the Joker, and he invented Robin. Who knows Jerry Robinson? Show of hands. This is why Jerry was the crankiest guy I ever worked with in my life. He never got any credit for this kind of work. That's Jerry, hard at work. And Jerry owns the original surviving Batman artwork for his runs on Batman. This is some of the oldest existing Batman artwork. And like all comic book nerds, I used to have a podcast. This is me and Ed. And our biggest episode was about the movie Guardians of the Galaxy, which I love that movie because I love Rocket Raccoon. And now you're all wondering, why is he telling us this? I don't get it. I'm about to put it all together. So what have I been working on lately? Well, I've been the dean for 5 years, but to get here, like I mentioned, I went to Cooper Union on a full tuition scholarship, and for 155 years it was free. In 2006, our trustees and our president spent a lot of money on a building we maybe didn't need, which led to protests over tuition at Cooper Union. We had 11 students occupy the 8th floor of this building. They hung this banner outside. These were the protests. They also occupied the president's office for 65 days, which is one of the longest student occupations in American history. And after the administration continuing to charge tuition, I joined with some of my friends and we sued the Board of Trustees in New York Supreme Court. So I co-founded the Committee to Save Cooper Union. And I like to think about this as like retroactive continuity. Like I decided that was not okay and that we had to rewrite that history. So I made this website. We raised a lot of money. We hired lawyers and we sued in New York Supreme Court and we won. The president was forced to resign. The New York Attorney General reached a deal with us. We had a transparent search for new president, Laura Sparks, who, by the way, I love to work with. And we are now back on our way, which, again, is part of a 10-year plan, and we're 5 years into the plan, but I'm proud to say we're meeting all the milestones. And now, just so you know I'm serious, that's a tattoo of this building on my chest. It's how much I love this place. So the whole time I was fighting that lawsuit, it was like 4 years of my life, right? And people were like, why are you fighting so hard? Why do you fight? And I'm now going to play my talk backwards so that you understand why I fight. So Rocket Raccoon, one of my favorite characters in comics, was created by Bill Mantlo, who went to Cooper Union. Bill also wrote the Punisher story that introduced me to retconning and the minutiae of comics. He also invented Cloak and Dagger. Oh, my slides are out of order. What? How did that happen? Oh, we're good. So back to the Punisher. Oh, we good? Yep. So the current Punisher logo was, and this artwork for my podcast was designed by Victor Ochoa, who went to Cooper Union and was my student. Mad Magazine, the magazine I read in the comic book store, well, the first 21 issues of Mad Magazine were written by Harvey Kurtzman. He also drew the Mad Magazine logo that we know and introduced Alfred E. Newman to the world. Wacky Packs that I loved when I was a kid, those were made by Woody Gelman, who went to Cooper Union. He also invented Bazooka Joe and Mars Attacks, right? This Madonna record, this was designed by Karen Goldberg, who went to Cooper Union. This Metallica record, this record introduced me to a whole subculture of heavy metal when I was in high school. I was that dirtbag with the mullet and the leather boots and the jean jacket with the patch on the back of it. And this typeface on the cover, Kill 'Em All, that's Serif Gothic, this typeface, which just so happens is the same typeface used in the logo of my high school and was designed by Herb Lubalin, who went to Cooper Union. This legs logo I mentioned before was also designed by Herb Lubell in studio and appears in something by Woody Gelman, which is something I like to call a double Cooper Union. And if we get back to Metallica, I got to see Metallica in 2016 in a tiny club because the cover of their most recent record was designed by my student, Dimitri, right? And if we're gonna consider these two records were both published on vinyl, the vinyl record was invented by Emil Berliner, who went to Cooper Union in 1948. And you might be thinking, didn't Edison invent the vinyl record? Well, no, he invented the phonograph, but that's okay, because he went to Cooper Union too. That computer I started, it needs a microchip. Even every phone in your pocket right now needs a microchip to work. You cannot make microchips without William Gardner Paffan's process for refining silicon. And that modem I bought, that relies on, at least at the time, it relies on a technology called T-Carrier, which was worked on by Eric Sumner and his team at Bell Labs, who went to Cooper Union. And that technology was originally invented to send digital signals over the transatlantic and the trans-Pacific cable. And we know Peter Cooper was on the boat that laid the cable. So I like to joke that Cooper Union invented the internet. So if we cut back, was Superman the first comic I ever saw? Maybe, but that was made by Max Fleischer. He also invented rotoscoping and Betty Boop and did all the original Popeye cartoons. If we're going to talk about Superman, the Superman logo I grew up with and the DC Comics logo I grew up with were designed by Milton Glaser, who went to Cooper Union. He also wrote the book that introduced me to graphic design. You may know his work. Maybe you recognize this. The DC Comics logo was, the current DC Comics logo was designed by Emily Oberman and her team at Pentagram, and you can see that in Wonder Woman, which was directed by Patty Jenkins, who went to Cooper Union. These house ads, these were made by Neil Posner, who went to Cooper Union. This book changed my life. So I was at an open house just like you. I went for a portfolio review. I got in line, I showed all my work, and the guy behind the table said, "Do you have anything else?" And I reached into the pocket in my portfolio and I pulled out the school yearbook and the school literary magazine. And I said, "Yeah, I designed these and I did the paste up and I made the mechanicals to get these off to press." And he was like, "How did you learn to do that?" And I was like, "Oh, I read it in this book." And he goes, "Oh, funny, I wrote that book." This record, the thing that maybe led me here directly after Batman, was made by Michael Durrett, who went to Cooper Union. He's now my good friend. He also designed this logo you may be familiar with. And back to Batman, my childhood obsession, obsessed with the history of comics, obsessed with him beating Superman. My livelihood has been paying my rent, introduced me to Jerry Robinson, the first logo I ever designed. It's a long history with Batman. Can all be summed up with this cover. The upper left-hand logo is designed by Cooper graduate Milton Glaser. This is the comic I sold to pay for my first year at Cooper Union. I worked with Jerry Robinson, who created two of the main characters in this comic, and finally, Batman's probably the reason I'm standing here today, and Batman was co-created by a Cooper graduate named Bob Kane. I got one more thing, just one more. Same bat time, same bat channel. I saw that every day of my life as a kid. I still love the show. The typeface is called Adlib. This is what Adlib looks like. Adlib was made by Freeman Crawl, who went to Cooper Union. So now when I ask the question, who makes the world, I know Cooper Union makes the world. Thank you. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Fia. Thank you, everybody. We're going to do a Q&A now, I think, right? I can leave this up for now, I guess. Okay.
Can you hear me? Perfect. All right. Thank you, Dean Essl. That is one of my favorite oral history stories, and I never get sick of it, just have to say that. So now we want to open up the floor to you guys, because I'm sure you have questions. We went through a lot of materials today. We have a stand-up mic here, if you don't mind just popping up front and asking a question, or if you want to shout it out, we can repeat your question. And anybody have any questions? Don't be shy.
There's usually questions about the home test.
Yeah. Oh, yes. What's your question? Yeah.
My question is, it was mentioned through the lawsuit that took place that there was a 10-year revival plan to get back to a tuition-free environment. What does that mean for the students who are entering in 2022? And is there a progressive change over that period, or is it just at the end of 10 years it reverts back to what it was?
The plan back is online, so I know one of the things we've done in the past, I believe at least 2 years, is we've kept tuition flat, so there's been no raise to the percentage or no cost of living increase. Because there's still 5 years left on the plan, I don't think it will affect the incoming class this year. That answers the question, right? You know, the better we do with fundraising, the faster we would go back. But as of right now, we're the best way to describe it is we're on plan. So
It's not a scale.
there are components of that in the plan. I don't know them off the top of my head, but it is dependent on us, of course, raising the funds to be able to do that. Yeah, cool. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Hi. What's your question? So the question is, if a student is rolled over from early decision to regular, do they have the chance to submit more work? And the answer is no. Yes. Want to take this?
Absolutely. I was going to say here, yes. There is a lot of flexibility once you have graduated from foundation year. You will be able to sort of customize your own trajectory through Cooper, and you could make a focus on painting, but you could also, as I said earlier, you could take a variety of classes. You don't have to specialize because we don't have a major.
There's one other thing to add on that. We do something that I'm not aware the other schools do, which is, as Fia mentioned, because we don't have majors and we consider it a generalist program. In your sophomore year, we'll only let you concentrate, or let's say you were interested in graphic design. We would only allow you to take 2 classes your sophomore year in graphic design. So we will let you focus on one thing, but we also, in a way, have to insist that you sample some more offerings your sophomore year. For instance, I came to Cooper Union only to do graphic design. My sophomore year, I tried to sign up for 3 graphic design courses, and I was told you can't do that. So I ended up taking Silkscreen instead, and Silkscreen completely changed my practice and showed me how to do prints and taught me about separations, and I'm a better graphic designer because I took Silkscreen. So in the end, they knew what was good for me, even though I did not.
And I can just add to it too. I've seen several students, you know, as a junior or senior, who are like, I just want to do photography or just want to do painting. And I myself, when I came into Cooper, I thought I was just going to focus on photography. But because I had to take something else, like sculpture and printmaking, I ended up falling in love with other types of making, which actually became really important because I was able to branch out and start thinking about photography in a bigger way and doing installations with it and combining media and things like that. So, and I know a lot of people that came in thinking they were going to do one thing and ended up somewhere totally different because they were, you know, asked to do other things. So. What was it? Yeah.
We do not have illustration at Cooper Union. We only have drawing and painting and design. But there are many, many well-known illustrators who graduated from the Cooper Union. And, you know, I could give you a few examples from children's books off the top of my head. Clifford the Big Red Dog is by a Cooper Union graduate. Harold and the Purple Crayon is by a Cooper Union graduate. The Magic School Bus is by a Cooper Union graduate. I could do it forever. There's like 20 that I know of. But that's one venue for illustration, but that is a path out of Cooper Union. We just don't have classes specifically in, say, the marketplace for illustration.
What percentage of students accepted are early applicants?
What percentage of students that apply early decision are accepted? I would say we take about 1/3 of our class early decision. So somewhere between like 20, 22.
And how many approximately how many applicants are there each year?
So it varies year to year. We had about 893 last year. And I know while that you're kind of thinking, oh my gosh, for 65 spots, that sounds daunting. But I just want to let you guys know, since you're here, that actually of that number, only about half will actually complete and submit the home test. So you see what the home test does? It's kind of like a filter. Automatically, people see it, and for one reason or another, they might not, you know, complete it and submit it. So for us, the home test is kind of a great gauge because it shows one's ability to follow through. It shows their commitment and how much they want to attend Cooper. So if, you know, just by submitting that home test, you're already like at about an advantage from, you know, many people because you did it. So, yeah. Yeah.
What is the National Portfolio Day?
I'm sorry, could you ask?
National Portfolio Days.
When are the National Portfolio Days? I don't have them committed to memory, but they are on our website. If you go to the visit page and click on School of Art, they're all listed there. And this year, the National Portfolio Day events, they are half virtual and half of them are in person. And they already have started for the year. Yeah.
Are students encouraged to do internships, and can you talk a little bit about that during your imagine a lot of opportunities?
Yeah, do you want to talk about the internship?
Yeah, we actually have a program that no other school has, which is we actually don't give credit for internships. There's a complicated, very good reason for that, but what we do instead is we'll actually pay a student to take a free internship. So we have funds available to pay the student an hourly rate to go work in the field. Most internships that let's say the juniors and seniors get are paid, usually. We don't have a formal internship program like, say, SVA does, other than the program I mentioned where we supervise the payments. But encouraged, yes, but not formally in the curriculum. Does that make sense? Okay.
Thanks. Yes, ready for it? So just to understand, if I understand you correctly, he's currently in an undergraduate program for graphic design right now? Okay. Okay. He should apply as a transfer student. Correct. Yes, a transfer applicant has to apply the same way as a first year. They have to do the Common App, and they have to submit a home test and submit all the transcripts, same things. Great. Well, the graphic design department. It's
pretty good.
It's pretty amazing at Cooper, we'll say. We have a lot of really talented alumni working in graphic design. Yeah.
Cool.
Great. Thank you.
Could you tell me what is the good portfolio?
Sorry, what are the...
What is good portfolio for you?
What is a good portfolio? It's a tough question.
I can speak a little bit. So we would like to, I think Amy said a little bit about this earlier, but we would like to see independent work is very good for us to see, not only assignments. We also would like to see a broad range of what the student can do and is interested in. And what else? Now
I mean, a portfolio of all assignments is obvious to us. So self-directed work, as Fia said, is maybe the most important thing to try to reveal to us in the portfolio. Whether that's work you're doing outside of class or work you're experimenting with your own or work in a series, or really we want to see that you're dedicated to it without somebody essentially in a classroom telling you what to make.
Yeah.
But it's also that we also would like to see if the student can work in different media. So it's good if you, for example, paint, but maybe you have a sculptural work that you've done as well. We would love to see that as well, to understand that you're curious and you would like take risks, for example, in your work. We would also like to see a sketchbook where the student, so that we can understand a little bit about how the student thinks and how they develop their works.
Yeah.
One quick piece of advice is do not send a half-blank sketchbook.
It makes the committee very sad. They're like, look at all this beautiful unused paper.
But also one last thing, as has been underscored here, that the home test is really the most important part of your application. And in the home test, what we look for is also, again, creativity, originality, curiosity, and sort of people going out and finding unusual solutions to the questions that we're asking.
And please make sure to submit all 6, because if you only do 2 of the home test problems, you aren't going to fare well. Yeah. Way in the back, you've had your head up for a while.
So I was wondering, like, an AP test for art history, can I submit that test? Would there be an
No, unfortunately, we do not accept AP credit in the School of Art. Okay.
How many humanities courses and which humanities courses are required?
Would like that.
There's HSS, Humanities and Social Sciences, essentially, there's a core, 1, 2, and 3. So that's first semester, second semester, third semester. And then there's an art history requirement in the School of Art every semester. And then after the core of the humanities program, there's elective requirements until graduation, I believe at least 1 per semester.
Oh, yeah. What opportunity does Cooper Union do to let the world know about your artwork?
We have an end of the year show every year when we're in person. It's in our buildings. It's open to the public. We do a huge promotion campaign to invite people. The last 2 years, we've had a website that shows all the work for the end of the year show. That's obviously public for everybody. On the Instagram account for Cooper Union, we promote individual students and their work and do interviews about college life and their work on campus. And then we also, in my office, have a newsletter where we promote alumni work out to, I don't know, a few thousand people on the list. And then the artists who graduate do an amazing job of often promoting themselves, so that comes back to us, and then we send that out to the students via the newsletter. So it's a very small community, and in a way, we all know what we're doing, and we all help get it out to the world.
And you'll also do your senior shows. You said that,
Oh, yeah,
I think.
thank you.
You'll also do your senior shows, which are visited by anyone can come in and look at these works from the outside. And as you're also taught by distinguished artists, usually, depending on what kind of relationships you develop, there is a kind of mentorship relationship that happens that may continue also after you've graduated, and that also may help you with references, to get, for example, art assistant jobs or other kinds of ways also of kind of being part of the larger art community in New York and to show eventually and other things.
Right in the middle.
What are the rules about
Deferring.
deferring?
If you're admitted and you would like to defer to 1 year, you just have to, check that off when you accept our offer and let us know. Giving that to the dean here.
Always get this question at the open house. There is some. My practice, I got into web design because I spent a lot of time in the engineering school and learned how web servers work, and they were very kind to me in the engineering school. But that happened on the edges, right? It wasn't formalized. The dean in engineering started a few years ago, Barry Shoup. We've been working together to collaborate on a few classes. So there's a data science for social good class, where an adjunct in the School of Art teaches with a professor in engineering. So there's a machine learning component and then also a design component. Right now we're running a class which is cross-listed with the architecture school, which is a class that uses technology like LiDAR, building scanning, 3D printing, VR, AR, to address inequities in the way the police use architecture to harm protesters. We're working with the Dean of Engineering on inroads into their upcoming computer science program. So coding visuals, using code to create artworks. We're gonna, as that program moves out of the proposal phase into implementation, we're working with him to give access or some access to our students into that program. And then as Fia mentioned, we now also have the ACE lab, the AACE lab, which has like every machine you could ever want to fabricate something. So now we have a space where, say, mechanical engineers are in the same space with architects, are in the same space with maybe a sculpture student who's in there, right? So it's the thing we run into with that is that the engineering school is very professionalized, right? So because they're graduating with majors and with a certain degree, their class schedule is very controlled in terms of prerequisites and what's next. Same with architecture, because of the way the architecture school works, all the architecture students essentially take the same classes with a few electives here and there. So when the school asks us to publish a list of all the courses that are open to every student on campus, the School of Art list is basically all of our classes are open. So we will occasionally get architecture students and engineering students in our classes, but it's a little rare that our students would take a class in the other schools.
Yeah.
We're working on it, though.
Yeah.
We are.
Wait, we have an online question. We have a question from at home online.
For submitting a sketchbook, does that mean we send in our physical book with the home test, or should we include it with our online portal?
We would like to see it submitted with the home test if possible.
We will return it.
Yeah. You will get it back.
We will return your sketchbook.
Oh. Yeah. Okay.
Where are the students coming from?
All over. Yes. I mean, we have students from all over the United States as well as from overseas as well. So it's always a really diverse group every year.
In the back? No, you. Yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering, is digital art like a good thing to put on your portfolio?
It depends. If it's your best work, I would include it.
But
Absolutely, but I think again, coming back to the question of variety, that it's great if you also have physical work, observational work, so that we can understand a range.
definitely. Yeah.
The question was, why did I want the Joker to kill Robin? Batman's just a better comic when he's solo. Great question.
Big question. Way in the back. And
I have like a series of images that are included in one work with multiple like drawings. Would that be one like piece, or would that be multiple pieces?
that would be one piece. Yeah, you can just, allude to having multiple perspectives of the same piece.
You could say, title, slide A, slide B. So as long as you make it clear to us that we're viewing the same series, That's all you need to do.
And we're not going to disqualify you if you go over 20.
Not for that, no.
No. Yep. Do we recommend having themes for the portfolio?
I wouldn't say so, just because sometimes in my foundation class, I hear students tell me like, well, in my practice, I don't do this and I don't do that. And you're actually, when you come in, you're then very young, and we're here to figure out what your practice actually is. So therefore, having a theme is not going to show us that you are open and that you're ready to go and that you are like kind of probing into what is possible. It might come off as you are kind of closed off and you think that you know already what you're doing, but that's actually why you want to come to school, to understand and figure out your practice.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Thank you, Fia. Perfect.
Okay, I think we actually, if there aren't any more questions, we should probably move forward with the portfolio reviews and tours. So I just want to talk a little bit of housekeeping and how that's going to work. So if you are listening online and you've signed up for a virtual portfolio review, you should have received an email by now with a time slot and the instructions for logging in to Zoom. So if you haven't received that, you can email my assistant, Gabby Bucay, and that's gaby.bucay@cooper.edu, or if it's easier, admissions@cooper.edu. Okay, and for everyone here, I know we have some people that have elected to sign up for just tours, and then other people for portfolio reviews. What I'd like to do is have everyone that signed up for a portfolio review go over to the back of the Great Hall by the AV booth, and we're going to take you across the street to where the review rooms are. But just a note that this is always going to be like the home base. So if you go for a portfolio review and then you want to have a tour, you're going to come back here and we'll have a tour guide standing by ready for you, okay? So we are going to have all the people that want a portfolio review head back to the AV booth, and we will have our student guide. It's going to raise your hand at you in a second, and thank you, and thank you. And everybody else just sit tight for a moment. Okay. Okay, and I'm just going to now use this opportunity to thank everybody for being here again, especially also our at-home participants. Thank you for everyone who's watching us on the live stream today. I hope we can meet you in person sooner than later, and thank you again. It's great to be back in person after not being here for 2 years. So thank you for being here today. Okay.